We already good, deal. Thanks for showing up this morning. Hello there in TV land that's watching. If you want an 8x10 glossy, let me know. I'll get it printed and sign it and send it out to you. For all those present, I'll have them ready for you next week. So what are you doing over? Come sit over here. If y'all can sit close, that'd be great. So anyways, the book of Joshua is what we're on. And I just kind of want to go back. Did we ever figure out who Joshua's parents were? Because remember, he's the son of none. So nobody knows who his parents is. I think that joke has wore its way out. But let's do a little review, because part of what we want to do is we want to make sure that we get the chance to ask our questions. You have your input. Love to hear the input that you have. That's how we all get further in the knowledge of the Word. And so please, there's no such thing as a dumb question or a statement or anything else. Feel free to share. But we get started here. Moses had delivered Israel and delivered them from Egypt. Sorry, I just lost my thoughts and my notes. But he took them out there. They wandered around for about 40 years in the heat and all this other good stuff, never making it into the promised land, because that was God's plan. You're not going to go in. You're going to wander around for 40 years. Part of that, though, there was a little guy in there by the name of Joshua that really got close to Moses. Moses taught him a lot of stuff. He got intellectual input. He also got military input. There's a lot of stuff that he learned from Moses, and I'm sure from the other elders that were a part of that group also, the folks that had grown up in that area and could share stuff with them. So they wandered around in the wilderness for a while, and then Moses dies, and that's where this book starts coming in here with Joshua. And Moses is dead. And then this is part of what we covered last week. And just so you know, I did remember my phone. So I got some notes there. I got some notes here. And then we can start up here. By the way, I don't, let's see if I got it here. Yes, I did. I did find some younger pictures of Joshua there. There's the parents. And I can't even read it. I made it big and I still can't read it. So what does it say up there, Matt? Can you read it? This is Joshua as a kid. You're the one who insisted on horn lessons. So there's your picture of Joshua as a younger child and all that good stuff. But last week we did review Israel delivered from Egypt. We said that Israel, led by Moses, wandered in the Sinai wilderness for a while, and then in Joshua 1, here we find that Moses is dead. God speaks to Joshua. And in the NIV, it says, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give to you. Let me just look it up here. Anybody got the New King James? Or if not, I've got it.
I got King James.
Yeah, read yours what it says, because doesn't it say arise on yours?
What verse?
Verse 2.
Moses and my servant is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, thou and all this people, unto the land which I do give to them, even to the children of Israel.
Yeah, I like I've got New King James Version. I got the NIV also. I use both of them. They're both study Bibles. I get a lot of good input. And the one in the NIV I like, but I like the one in the New King James because it says, arise and go. Arise and go. It wasn't, hey, if you wanted to do this tomorrow, feel free to do it, Joshua, I'm sure, was aware of the promise that God had given them. Am I right? Everybody agree with that? He had to know all this good stuff. So God says, arise and go. And let me ask you, if we're looking at what he told, let me make sure I say this right. What he said to Joshua is arise and go, a command to go and do this. Is there something that you can relate to in the New Testament where God tells us to do the same thing that we can apply today?
Great Commission?
Yeah. Go to Matthew 28:18 there. Go and make disciples. Go and make disciples. Sorry, I lost my place. Yeah.
Also see this is the example Peter.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait for the mic. That's what we get you.
Oh, okay. Thank you, George. The example we have with Peter when the Lord tells him to arise and go, doubting nothing.
Yeah, yeah. You know, what I want to do is, when we're looking at the book of Joshua, we can do this and we can learn all the historical information. And I think I've done that at least once or twice over the so many years I've been a Christian. I'm sure some of you have done the same thing. The challenge I find, though, is when we look at the Old Testament, we look at the life of these characters, like in Joshua's case, and then in a little bit will be Rahab and stuff. How can we look at that, you know, because a lot of it ends up in the New Testament, too. A lot of Joshua you'll find in the New Testament, quoted from or, you know, examples from. But how can we put that in our lives today? You know, what is it that they did that we can implement today so that we don't have to go through a lot of the stuff that they've done already? This is God telling Joshua to go do that. In the New Testament, he tells Christians alike, go and make disciples. How many of us find that to be a challenging? How many of that? Yeah, it's challenging. In a few verses here, we're going to get something that we spent a little time on last week, and I find it kind of interesting. I got this little, I got this dog tag on right here, and I'll read it to you in a minute. But, so anyways, Joshua is told to go, arise and go over the Jordan. So he picks up, he gets ready to go. And then, let me see, where am I at? And then in 1 through 4 through 5, the promise of victory and God will be with Joshua. So God's told Joshua to go over there. You'll conquer this entire land. It'll all be yours. Some of it's already conquered, by the way, when they get over that way. But it's all yours. This is a promise God gave to Joshua. Does God make us promises today? Where does he make promises? How does he? Is there a scripture you can think of? Down here.
In 1 John 5, when he talks about the confidence in approaching God, that he promises that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And then he says if he hears us, we know that we have what we've asked of him. So he makes some pretty strong promises regarding prayer.
Yep, excellent. What else? BJ?
In Hebrews, I will never leave you or forsake you.
Absolutely.
Philippians, I can do all things through God who strengthens me.
Very good. Excellent. These are all good things. Back there. Renee.
John 16, in this world you will have trouble, but have faith because I've overcome the world.
Yeah.
But we're going to have trouble.
Isn't that great?
That's a promise. But he's going to be with us.
Amen. Amen. Look, you know, God told Moses, go out there and, lead these people out, and he did that. He protected them. He kept his word there, and then he promised them the promised land. So he gets with Joshua, he moves them on over. Is there anywhere in there where God says you won't have any problems, any issues, or anything? You find that anywhere in there? What do you find in there?
Be strong.
Be strong. Be courageous. I have to share with you, several weeks ago, we had Bud and Terry Hoover over. Some of you know them, but they're up at Trinity Church, and she was putting together these little tags, and I'm going to take it off because it keeps knocking the microphone. But it says, "Be strong and courageous," Joshua 1:9. That was before I even started to teach this class. She had given that to me, and it's like, man, you talk about the way God works and tells you, be strong and courageous. I needed to hear that because I was telling George in the very beginning. He says, "What do you want to teach?" I said, "Well, any current events or something in the New Testament." George comes in, "No, we really need you to teach Joshua." I said, "Really?" Be strong and courageous, So, God's telling Joshua and all these other, be strong and courageous. Says it 3 times in there. By the way, I did look up, do not be afraid. In one form or another is mentioned 365 times in the Bible. That's like one day for every day of the year, Do not be afraid. Here, be strong and be courageous 3 times within a matter of just a few things. So he's telling us to be strong and courageous. So if you looked at that, what are some of the things today that you need to be strong and courageous in? What is some of the things that maybe not you personally, but what are some of the things today that you find that you could need to be strong and courageous in? Here, let me help you out. Courageous God calls us all to be. I already talked about some of that. So here's a couple I put down to myself. Speak out against sin. Be strong. How many of you, I'm sure at one time or another, a brother or sister, and you know it's sin, you got to go out there and confront it, and you find yourself not being able to do that. You got to be strong and be courageous. There's another one. Identify as a believer and share the gospel publicly. Look, I've been a Christian since 1988. Is that right? Yeah, 1988. It's still difficult at times. I mean, Catherine and I go out to eat, and we're getting ready to pray for the food, and she's dragging this waitress over. Hey, what can we pray? And it's kind of like, be strong and courageous, Okay, let's talk to her, It's a challenge. What are some of the things that you find either in your life or some other things you can think of to be strong and courageous? I even put another one up there, even when it brings persecution. How many of you have ever been struggled with that over the years? You go to do something, you're being persecuted because your beliefs you're a Christian and whatever, and you're being persecuted. It's tough. You got to be strong and courageous to do those kind of things. What else? See, we're going to be allowed to bring coffee in here next week, so you guys can. Yeah, I've already started it, and there's an elder with a microphone, so I'm sure something will be said.
Put that down.
You got to be strong and courageous to bring coffee in here next week, all right? All right, so give that some thought. Courage will grow when we meditate on God's word, and that was what was mentioned in there. What verse is it? I forgot what verse it is now. 8, yeah. Do not let this book of the law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. I find then when I don't have my prayer time or that I'm not in the Word or have my alone time or meditation, whatever you want to call it, I find that it's a tougher day or a tougher week and things get going and you drift further from the Word of God. It's easier to just do worldly things because you're not in the Word. You find that yourself being challenged more. You find that being strong and courageous is maybe not even there because you're being influenced by outside. It's harder, and I believe, in all honesty, they were getting ready to encounter some really big things moving into across the Jordan, and they needed to meditate on that word every single day. They needed to keep it right there. Then somewhere where it was written on their foreheads, it said, and stuff like that. How often should we be reading? How often? How long? George?
So I noticed something when you said that. I have a marking on this passage in the Bible, in my Bible here, and I rarely write in it because I hate the oldness of writing, of annotating. But from what you're saying, I think the hard part or the good part about the passage 9 is that it helps me remember, and at least my struggle comes when it trying to be less in the problems of this world. So it's one of those remind yourself kind of passages that remember, take that step, but God's with you when you're taking that step.
Excellent.
And it's easy to be distracted, so and I guess the attempting to be strong part is understanding that no matter what the struggle is that I'm going through, no matter how I'm stressing out about it, understanding that, hey, God's with you. be strong with it, push forward, have faith, and that faith will carry you forward. If you are true and
Right.
stick with it.
Good.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that faith also because that plays a whole lot. I want you to think just a minute, because when I was reading this, sometimes we can read these things and it's kind of like a story that just happened years ago. Really, what's the big deal and stuff like that. I served in the military for 6 years. I was on my way to Vietnam, didn't go. Fortunately, they stopped everything, but we did play cleanup. And I can't relate 100% to Joshua because he was in charge of millions of people, thousands of people. I just can't even comprehend that. I was in charge of a company of about 60 some odd guys, and that was my responsibility. And that was already challenging enough. I had to get up and tell them to do things they didn't want to do. A lot of them, we were getting ready when we were getting ready to go somewhere, none of us really wanted to go. And at that time, I wasn't a Christian. I don't think we had we had one Mormon in our group, so we did have a Mormon, so I guess we could have been saved through the Mormonism. But in all honesty, there was just a bunch of guys getting ready to go for battle, And I'm looking at this, and I'm saying, well, Joshua is getting ready to go in for battle also. He's getting ready to also do something else that I still can't comprehend today, is this water's going to part, and they're going to cross on dry land. Not mushy land, but they're going to do on dry land. Kind of like what Moses did back in Genesis, or wherever he did, Exodus. It's in one of those books, right? So anyways, same thing, but that sea departed, opened up big time. I don't know about y'all, I just can't comprehend that. I've been on boats where they've sunk, and I guarantee you it did not part, and there was mushy on the bottom where we were at. It just can't get that. I've also been around creeks where they've dried up. There's no water running, but they're still kind of mushy. It takes a long time for them to dry out, and it's just like, man, I can't wrap my mind around this. But by being in the Word, by knowing that God is going to be there, having that faith that Sully was saying just a little while ago, or a minute ago, that will carry us through. But what happens when you don't do that on a regular basis? Do we drift? Do we struggle? Do the problems of the world overcome you? I know they do me. I mean, some of the simplest, craziest, stupidest stuff just freak me out sometimes. Like my HOA. That's where I live.
Well, if you don't pay attention, you wind up like Solomon.
Hold on. George down there.
Oh. I forgot what I was going to say. If we're not careful, we wind up like Solomon in 1 Kings 11. What verse is it? Verse 11, he says, because you have not done this, kept the commandments of God, my covenant and my statutes, which I have commanded you, I will surely tear the kingdom away from you and give it to your servant. So we have a responsibility to pay attention, or we lose everything.
Right. Good. How does this go over? What examples can you find in the New Testament that relates to what Joshua is going through here? Hold on a second. Over here.
You could kind of correlate this to the apostles. Jesus has basically called them and said, this is what you need to do.
Right. Yeah.
And something I find interesting also is verses 2-9 that's God talking directly to Joshua.
Mm-hmm.
And from a human perspective, when you think about it, Moses was basically the man in charge for a long time. And it's almost, you can correlate it to today's world, like here's a football coach, been a good coach for a long time, and he decides to, all right, I'm done, I'm stepping down. The guy that comes behind that really good, legendary coach has a really tough job. Moses has been a leader for so long, and now Moses is gone, and now it's handed to Joshua. But God is saying, I'm here.
Right.
Do what I say, it's going to be okay.
Right. The neat thing about that's a great comment, because the neat thing about that, Joshua was there for the presence of everything that Moses had to go through. So he actually saw God tell Moses and follow through on those promises that he made to Moses. You know, and the neat thing is he got all that training and all that education, but it still doesn't mean you don't have concerns or fears or, I mean, even today, how many of you gone through things, you know God's there, but you're still afraid to take that step or to share that gospel, or because go make disciples. You know, I think we do a great job of really supporting one another and taking care, and we do the missionary stuff. And I find that overall, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but the biggest struggle I have is reaching out to the neighbors, to sharing the gospel or bringing them in and stuff like that. And that's what we should be about. That was what Jesus said at the very end, go make disciples. Here he's telling Joshua, rise and go, you're ready, let's do our thing. So the next part of this is in preparations. He's making these preparations in Joshua from 10:11 it starts. The command to the officers, he's saying in 10, so Joshua ordered the officers of the people, go through the camp and tell the people, get your supplies ready. 3 days from now, you will cross the Jordan here to go in to take possession of the land the Lord your God has given you for your own. Why do you think we're waiting 3 days? Why didn't God just say, hey, get your stuff, let's go? Why did you think God said for 3 days?
When Moses got ready to cross the Jordan in Exodus 12, there were 600,000 men, not including women and children. If you've ever had to move a group at a family reunion, it is difficult. And so I'm pretty sure that he wasn't going to be able to get 1 million people ready to go right now. You got babies, you got cattle, you got all this stuff. But in Exodus 12, it says there were 600,000 men when Pharaoh finally decided to let the people go, plus women, plus children. Yeah. And again, if you've ever had to move a crowd or manage a crowd in a high school or something, you don't do it in 1 minute. That's right. That's right. And if it's like anything today, you know, your wives got to get their hair on, the makeup on, and put it. Oh no! Don't give her back that microphone. You're going to be in trouble like Daryl Brown was for his announcement. About 6 women came up to me and said, "We're going to get Daryl." Yeah, so we're going to put you with Daryl. Yeah, I found that kind of interesting, but it is. He said, "Go through." George over there, Roselli. He said, "Go through," and I was like, 3 days, that got me. But could you imagine all those people? Those men had to go through and tell all those people. It wasn't like, you know, Joshua doing it individually. It would have probably been 10, 15 days. But there's another reason, too, here in a minute we'll talk about. But, you know, you still got to go through it. And it's a very good point. You got a huge amount of people. It had to take at least a few days to get together. Sully?
I look at it as many of the lessons that I've seen in the Bible are challenges, rather. God gives you what you can handle as a human, understanding that if he gave you 1 day, it's like you're rushing, you're not, that may not be practical for human standards, human abilities. I mean, right. God can do anything, but you as a human, it's a reasonable standard for what you can do. It's the way things are written and communicated to where us as humans can understand and can kind of be on board with without failing. And I think that's one of those points where he's like, you can do this in 3 days, and the confidence you have and understanding, I can do this in 3 days. He says, 3 days it is.
Good point. Excellent. Yeah, it was just, I don't know, just was one of those things I looked at and was like, why 3 days? You know?
I think when you change plans quickly, to most people it says it's an emergency. Like if you had said, we're going to go now, then it seems like an emergency. But when you say, okay, we have 3 days, I think people are able to say, okay, there's a plan and we need to prepare. But if you go quickly, it's like an emergency and people are automatically thinking, what's going on? What went wrong? But when you have 3 days, there's a plan. God's got a plan for you. You have this time to prepare.
Yeah.
It's not an emergency. Just have faith and go.
Yeah, very good. Gives them a plan and also creates some sort of a comfort level, you know, that's not emergency, what's going on, like you said. It's very good. Excellent. I hadn't thought about that. So then, anybody else? So then in 12 through 15, it says, but to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, Joshua said, remember the command that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you. The Lord your God has given you rest and has granted you this land. Your wives, your children, and your livestock may stay in the land that Moses gave you east of the Jordan, but all of your fighting men, fully armed, must cross over ahead of your brothers. You are to help your brothers until the Lord gives them rest, and as he has done for you, and until they too have taken possession of that land that the Lord your God has given them. After that, you may go back and occupy your own land, which Moses, your servant of the Lord, gave you, east of the Jordan toward sunrise. Let's see, is that where I want to stop? Yeah, let me go on through the little bit more here. Let's see. Then they answered Joshua, whatever you have commanded us, we will do, and wherever you send us, we will go. Just as we fully obeyed Moses, so we will obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. Whoever rebels against your word and does not obey your words, whatever you may command them, will be put to death. Only be strong and courageous. There's that last thing. Be strong and courageous. I like that. I don't know if we probably got to say that a lot more. That might be the thing of the day. You get up in the morning, I'm going to be strong and courageous. Start your day out like that, and then you can face the day. So these guys were told to go on across the river, you know, and help out. One tribe was on the east side, was to go help the folks on the west side. And I was looking at that. It's like, how comfortable do we get in our own lives? And we're all but we see our brothers and sisters struggling, or maybe we see a neighbor struggling, or whatever the case may be, and we don't do anything about that. But here, God is telling them, well, Joshua's telling, but it came from God, you need to go help these people. You got land already given to you. You can, your children, your wives and all that can set up camp and be happy, cook meals, but you got some other folks that need some help, and you need to go take care of them first. Where in New Testament do you see things like that taking place?
When Jesus fed the 5,000, they had come to see him, and they didn't bring any preparations. They didn't know how long they were going to be there. And the disciples said, you know, if we had a year's wages, we wouldn't be able to feed these people.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, God always provides a way for us to carry out his commands if we'll just follow his plan.
Yeah, very good. What else? Anybody else? And then down here.
I'm kind of seeing a picture of immediate concern with the Israelites. You know, when it talks about if they didn't follow Joshua and obey God's commands, that there was an immediate threat of death. For us, you know, we're in a comfortable country thus far. That immediate threat of death isn't present. So we kind of sit on our laurels, perhaps, and nevertheless, there is the threat of hell for disobeying God and not following God's commandments.
Yeah, absolutely. God had told them that, hey, look, you're going to be in charge, and the same thing that I did for Moses, I'm doing for you. And the neat thing was the people there recognized that. They even, you know, in that verse said it back to them. They were sold on the whole, Joshua's in charge, and we're going to go because God's, you know, look at whatever God told Joshua is what's going to take place.
When the church was first set up, they had men set aside to help people in the church. I think it was the widows and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's several references about taking care of the widows and orphans.
In Philippians 2, read that a lot about our attitude being the same of Jesus. In the verse right before it, in verse 4, he said, each of you should look not only to your own interest, but to the interest of others.
Yeah.
It's not just about ourselves.
Right. You know, when Jesus came, he said, I came to seek and save the lost. Everybody remember that? And then the other thing, he says, I'm here to serve my brethren, the church, but I'm also here to serve the lost. You know, and I think sometimes I feel like there's a priority there. We're going to take care of our own first, and then we're going to go out and take care of others. But it is commanded we go out and take care of them. I mean, we're widows and orphans and everybody else. I don't know about you, but I find that kind of a struggle at times. Either because I'm procrastinating or I'm lazy or whatever the case may be. You know, in the neighborhood we lived in, we've gotten to where we cook extra food and we take it to one of our neighbors. But really, that's the easiest thing in the world. It is something, don't get me wrong, but I feel like I need to be doing more. And we tried to talk to them, and, you know, we've talked to a few other people in the neighborhood. But I don't know if we do enough. Do we invite them to church? Do we have a Bible study? Have we ever just said, hey, how would you like to talk about the gospel? When's the last time any of us has done? And I'm not trying, don't raise hands, please. I'm just throwing it out there as something for you to think about. But you got to be courageous to do stuff like that. We run across people all the time. My wife challenges me more than anybody I know in the world. She talks to everybody and anybody, and it doesn't make a difference. She will bring, somehow or another, God gets in that conversation. Am I right? Yes. We're sitting at a table. What can we do to pray for you? And it's like, let's just eat our food. You know, no, we got to pray, and she's going to be part of it. We've had waitress that have cried with us, you know. We had, man, that was a tough one. But we've got a commitment from God that he's going to be there with us no matter what. It's not going to be easy, but we got to do something to take this gospel out. So anyways, then the tribes have this promise. They show their allegiance to Joshua and stuff like that. So any other comments about chapter 1? Because we're going to move into chapter 2. And
I like the way it's phrased in chapter 1 about telling them to go in and possess the land that I've given you. You know, God gave them the land, but they had to go in and possess it. You know, we talk about salvation. It's a free gift.
right.
But it has to be possessed.
Right.
You know, we have to come forward in obedience.
Yeah, that's a very good point. You know, I study with people now. I started this a long time ago, and it's like, well, first of all, we can study the Word of God, but do you believe it? Do you believe God? There is God. He's the only one God. Do you believe that? Because if they don't believe that, you really got your work cut out for you at that point. Why don't you believe? You got to get to that point. Do you believe that God wanted us to live in paradise from the very beginning? I think he did. He created it. We were living in, I don't know what it looked like, but it had to be better than what we look like today. And then all of a sudden, we as humans messed up. We made that choice, which is kind of neat. God gives us a choice. And through all time, God gives us that choice. And like you were saying, we are guaranteed salvation, but do we go after it? Do we really want it? These guys were convinced, so convinced that it was theirs, that if you didn't do what it said, they would put you to death. Anybody else have input? Let's see if I've got this right. Whoops, too far. I think I already said that. So now in chapter 2, we get in here with Rahab and the spies. This is kind of a cool thing, because I was doing a little bit more reading on this, and Joshua sends forth these spies. He says, then Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim. Go look over the land, he said, especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land. So the king of Jericho sent the message to Rahab, bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land. But the woman who had taken the 2 men and hidden them she said, yes, the men came to me, but I do not know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the city gate, the men left. I don't know which way they went, so go after them quickly. You may catch up with them. So I'm going to stop right there real quick. So when did Joshua send these spies out? Where were they located at this time? when he sent these spies out to spy, where were they at location-wise and maybe time-wise?
When you say they, are you talking about Joshua?
Joshua.
About the nation of Israel?
Joshua, they were at some spot. Was it during the period of those first 3 days? Was it during those 3 days? Good question, huh? Huh? Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I thought, that's why I said a while ago when we were talking about the 3 days, why did we wait those 3 days? I was sitting there thinking, well, there's got to be something else. And then I was reading down here and it's like, And I thought I had read something in here somewhere where it led me to believe it was during the 3 days, but for the life of me, I can't remember where it's at. And if you saw my Bible with all the scribbling on it, I may have written it in there, but I can't read what I wrote. So, but if it was during those 3 days, which I'm guessing it is during those 3 days. George, you can look that up and let me know somewhere during the week. So thanks, brother. Anyways, wouldn't that be kind of cool if it was during those 3 days? That would be another reason, strategically speaking, Joshua would send out somebody to spy out the land and nobody knew about it. That would be good military strategy, wouldn't it? Y'all just looking like, well, that, like, he's off the wall somewhere, maybe.
I think that goes along with the practicality of the plans which were given from God. It's not a matter of, hey, we always have a miracle at the tip of our finger, but it's do this works, do this, and the plan is put together for you, the step by step. As I said, being that we're humans, we can only be so good at things.
Right.
So him knowing us, knowing his creation, he knows if he tells you, hey, these are the steps you take, as long as you follow those steps, you've got it.
Yeah.
So I mean, but like I said, that's very reasonable to assume that this is the plan he told him from the beginning, and Joshua said, okay, you all get this part, and I will sit back and wait until, or do what I need to do and make sure this plan goes the way it's supposed to. Have faith, rather, while this plan is going along.
Very good. Yeah. Does this correlate with another previous spy incident? Before? The 12 spies, remember that? And who was the only? Joshua and Caleb. Go ahead. That was it? Okay. Okay. Yeah, so they went out, and 12 of them came back, and 10 of them said, forget it, and the other 2 said, yeah, this is a good thing, let's go for it. I think there was some strategy there on Joshua's point, sending out these 2 spies. If he only sent 2 out, he doesn't have a half a dozen other people trying to give input. He's going to get it from two people, rightly so. And I still think it was during the 3 days. That gave them time that people over here packing up and getting ready to go, and he's getting an inside look as to what it looked like in the across the river there before they go. Down here, George.
It says in Joshua 2:22, the spies went up into the mountain and stayed there 3 days until their pursuers returned. Then they, going down, returned to Joshua and gave him a report.
Maybe that's where I got the 3 days from. I don't know. Was it during the same 3 days that they were waiting to get ready to go?
And they crossed over in
Yeah.
Joshua 3.
Yeah, then they cross over, yeah. So anyways, I find it kind of interesting. There's some things in here. So I'm sitting there, every time I read these things, I used to just read through them and that would be it. Oh, that's a nice story. And then, share it with somebody, or I was teaching youth groups and we'd, hit the highlights and stuff like that. We really, okay. But they took some time. He sent spies over. He looked at everything. And I'm just like, man, that should be some of the stuff that we do. When we're looking at an area or getting ready to study with somebody or, get involved with something, we should really kind of look at it and examine it and see what's all involved with it so that we can give it our best and be prepared for it. It's like, believe it or not, studying for these things is not the easiest thing in the world for me because my memory seems to keep going. I forget the phone one week. At least I got notes, phone, Bible, I got PowerPoint, I got everything. I just can't remember what order it goes in half the time. But it takes time to prepare for things like this. And I think in life itself that we need to start taking time to prepare for things like that and start scoping it out and stuff like that. The good news is, no matter what it is, if we take the initiative to do it, God's promised he's going to be right there with us. That's what he promised that. So anyways, the spies go to Rahab's. So they went, they came to the house, and there's been some discussion, not that this is a real big one. It says harlot in here, but some of the scholars from years ago think that she was an innkeeper or whatever. I don't believe that. It says harlot here, that's what I go with, a prostitute, especially since it's mentioned a few other times in the scripture, other places. So they, but the woman had taken the two, read all that. Where am I at? 7. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the fords of the Jordan, and as soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. Before the spies lay down for the night, she went up to the roof and said to them, I know that the Lord has given this land to you, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. Could you imagine that? I mean, they know what's happening. That whole place is just panicking. They're afraid, and they know these spies have come over, so they're looking for the spies. But we've heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea. They've heard these tales. These things aren't new. I mean, that's been going around. What would you think if you'd heard today that somebody dried up the land and they crossed and water came back? I mean, it kind of freaked me out a little bit. The Red Sea for when you came out of Egypt, and what you did in Sihon and Og and the 2 kings of the Amorites east of Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is given in heaven above and on earth below. God is powerful. I mean, it's something that we can stand on and believe in, but there's a few things that we got to do. We got to be courageous and strong. We've got to be in the Word and meditated on a regular basis. And we got to have that faith and that belief that God will definitely take care of us, just the way he's taking care of Joshua here. Rahab hides and protects the spies. The Bible reports reports it as she kind of lied to the people that were coming there. It's just a lie. It doesn't say it's a praise or excuse. Rahab's lies is not justified, but it does show courage. She was willing to lie in order to save the spies and her family as time goes on. So in Joshua, we're pretty much out of time, but in Joshua, the rest of Joshua 2 and 3, read that, and we'll go over that next week. But Rahab's confession of faith, she hides, where we got? There we go. Go ahead, and I'll pick up in where Rahab 8 through 14 next week. And then one thing I wanted to share, I asked you to do this, and I wanted to. This is the verse. There was 2, and one was this. I asked you to go through first 2 or 3 chapters. I don't know if anybody did it. If you didn't, that's okay. Try doing it this week. Go through the first 3 verses and chapters, and see if there's a verse or something that just stands out to you and why it stands out to you. Or does it challenge you? For me, be strong and courageous really challenges me. Because a lot of times I'm normally pretty good at just let's just go for it and all that. But sometimes when it comes to the Word of God, I'm just not that way. But this one, that you also show kindness to my Father's house, prayerfully by my faith and prayers, my family can be saved or at least turn to God. The challenging part here, Rahab was so convinced and had so much belief and so much faith that she prayed for her own family to be saved. I don't do that enough. My family's got some issues. They're not saved, and I don't pray for them enough to be saved. And that's something that really just stood out to me. I need to pray for my family to be saved. Rahab did, and her entire household was saved. Just goes to show you the power of God if we're willing to really just get on it. We talked about prayer there this morning, to be on our knees. Let's be courageous. Let's show our strength. Let's show our faith and be like Joshua and Rahab. Let's believe God is there to be with us, just like it rolls over into the New Testament. And this week, let's just go through these 3 chapters and see if you can't find one verse, one word, it could be anything, that stands out to you. And why does it stand out to you? Why does it challenge you? Everybody with me? Look, I really appreciate your input. Let's input some more, because I really enjoy it. It makes the class a little bit more enjoyable when everybody's doing it, because you certainly don't want to hear me up here for an hour or 45 minutes just telling you all about Joshua. So I like getting involved there. So, all right, thank you very much. Have a great week, and I appreciate your participation.